Um, so gold and silver have always served this role as money. It's relatively scarce, has a high value per unit weight. It's very portable. It's divisible. And in fact, we just had a conference last weekend in Newport Beach, and we were talking about gold and how divisible it is. We were talking about, if anybody's familiar with the Golden Dome at Notre Dame, and that is actually in gold flake. Done that in gold flake. And the question was, how much gold did it take to cover the Golden Dome at Notre Dame? It's less than half an ounce of gold. So gold can be spread very thin, and thus is very highly divisible. It's also highly durable. Again, that's coined from 1895. Occasionally you will hear stories of shipwrecks. Well, at the bottom of the sea, they'll pull gold up, and it has the same luster that it had when the coins were newly minted. So what should be the supply of money? I mean, we get this question all the time. If you watch any of the financial news, they'll ask about the money supply, what should money supply be? And we never talk about that in terms of other things like biscuits or shoes. Nobody ever sits around and goes, oh my gosh, how many biscuits should we have? How many shoes should we have? We let the market determine that, right? But somehow now it's thought that somehow the government should determine how much money we should have. But the difference between other goods and money, the difference between biscuits and money, are that we're all better off if there are more biscuits. More biscuits are better than less biscuits. But having more money as opposed to less money, we're not any better off. In fact, if we doubled the amount of money overnight, none of us would be any better off because goods and services haven't changed. It makes our lives worth living, and the things that we use every day are the labor and capital and goods, and the amount of money doesn't really play into that. So it's if society is better off with goods and services, but not necessarily with more money. If the amount of money was doubled overnight, prices would just go up. Prices would roughly double. It wouldn't double overnight. Some goods and services would go up quicker than others, but society as a whole would not be better off with more money. So the market's perfectly capable of deciding what its own money supply should be, but unfortunately, the government has gotten involved in this over centuries and centuries, and which leads us to the discussion of counterfeiting. Now, when you counterfeit, gold is very hard to counterfeit. When you hold an ounce of gold, you immediately know by weight what it is. It's very easy to determine gold and whether it's really gold or something else. But if you were to try to counterfeit gold, you actually are you're harming everyone. You're harming everyone who all the other legitimate money holders are harmed when you create money out of nowhere. And of course, as you can imagine, counterfeiters benefit first. If you can't make money, if you were able to create gold and be able to pass it off as gold, say you made it out of brass or something else, you would benefit by being able to use that as money, trade it for goods and services, and at the expense of all other money holders. And if you want to guarantee a spot in jail, counterfeit. Get into the counterfeiting business, because the government is the counterfeiter, and they do not like competition. So, like I say, if you absolutely positively want to go to prison, get into the counterfeiting business. Now, counterfeiting took a big leap forward when government got in the money business, or the paper money business. And that's what this is. This is what passes for $20 today. Again, I go back to 1895. It was this. Now that's $20. Is that right there? And government is able to insist that people trade with that money, with that paper money, through legal tender laws. In other words, in the United States, you couldn't decide that this red, blue, and black pen are legal tender. You couldn't trade for those. You couldn't create contracts. You can't create a contract in gold, per se. The government prohibits that. The United States government insists that you take poor old Andy Jackson there as legal tender. Now, originally, governments went to paper money, but it was backed by gold. So you might have had the $20 bills circulating, but at least there was gold backing them up. Eventually, over time, that goes away. The last bit of tying of gold to paper was in 1971, and Richard Nixon undid that last tie. And he said, we're all Keynesians now. And at that point, government then is not constricted by the supply of gold, can create all the paper that it wants. And as my old teacher Murray Rothbard used to say, the government at that point is now in seventh heaven. They can create all the paper they want to pay for what they want to pay for. Various government programs, healthcare is being talked about, wars in various places around the globe, et cetera, et cetera. And then gold is derided as a barbaric relic. People who have gold are viewed with suspicion, and the fact that I have some of the yellow metal makes me immediately suspect with some people. And so paper money is the hip thing to have, and that's what everybody trades with. Now, just a bit about the demand for money. We've talked a little bit about the supply of money. Then you have the demand for money. Goods and services are increasing every year. So if you had the supply of money was relatively static, then the price of those goods and services would fall. And in fact, prices did fall from the mid-18th century until roughly about 1940. Unless there was the war years, prices did fall. So instead of this continual price increases that we've had in recent years, especially since 1971, prices would fall because as more and more goods and services are produced, the amount of money was held somewhat the same or static, then prices of goods and services would fall. But of course, that hasn't been the case. The money supply since 1980 has grown, I believe, by 460%, and thus we have a lot of money floating around. Eventually, the government, when they print money and they need money, it used to be that when they needed to inflate gold coins, they would just shave a little bit off of them. And they would take the shavings and bundle them up and make new coins and pay for their programs. That was back in the ancient times. Of course, with the printing press, it's very easy. You can just put bigger numbers on them. And this is a 10,000 dinar note from the Bank of Iraq. I picked this up this morning. I was down at my friendly Bank of Iraq branch here in Auburn. It's amazing what people will give you on the road these days, but I had a guy trying to buy me lunch one day with this. But anyway, you can see there's a very handsome guy on there. Still has his head in that picture, but anyway. I looked up the initial, now 10,000 dinars sounds like a lot, right? I looked up the official on the internet exchange, and that's worth about $8 US today. So, but as you know, as governments need to pay for more and more of their programs, they just add zeros, and they add zeros, and they add zeros. And then ultimately what happens is what's happened in, I mean, you want to see a big note. Yeah, this is $100 trillion. $100 trillion. Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Now imagine you saved your entire life and you worked hard and you put money away and you saved up $100 trillion. And you thought, you know, I've got a comfortable retirement because I got $100 trillion. Well, online yesterday, this is worth about the amount of a Happy Meal down the street at McDonald's. I actually think it's probably worth less than that in U.S. dollars, but just to show you that I'm not poor, I've actually got 2 of them. So, but this is what can happen when government gets a hold of the printing press. They want to create money out of nowhere to pay for their misdeeds. So, and this has happened numerous times, not just in Zimbabwe, various countries in South America, and of course the famous Weimar Germany in 1923. And in fact, of course, the hyperinflations don't happen all at once. They happen in stages, and Ludwig von Mises explained that initially in phase 1, prices, they don't rise as much as the money supply because the public still has deflationary expectations. Your expectations of prices are really based on your most recent past. So right now you don't think prices are going up. If you got money, you wouldn't necessarily immediately run out and spend it. In phase 2, instead of rising money, demand for money, moderating price increases, falling demand for money will intensify price inflation. And what falling demand for money will mean is that as soon as people get money, they have no demand to hold that money. They're going to turn around and spend it on anything as quickly as they can. And of course, in phase 3, as Mises explained, prices go up faster than money supply. There's a shortage of money. And money's disappearing. And in the German hyperinflation, workers were paid twice a day. And housewives would stand at the gate with a wheelbarrow, and their husband would run out to the gate and throw the money they had been paid into the wheelbarrow. The wives would go to the store and they would buy anything they could get their hands on. And, of course, ultimately this collapses. There's no goods to buy. That's the situation in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe used to be a very prosperous country, used to be the breadbasket of Africa, and through printing money, they've essentially just completely destroyed that economy. But in the case of the German mark, in 1914, 1 mark equaled 25 cents, or a quarter of a dollar. By October of 23, it took 25.3 billion marks for $1. And a month later, it took 4.2 trillion marks to equal $1. So you can see how quickly this happens in a hyperinflation. Certainly not predicting that as I stand here today, but just to give you an idea of what can happen as we go from what the market considers money, going from barter to gold and silver, but when it turns into paper, it can be something that is very deadly. So with that, since I put you in a good mood, it's time for a break.